see how that building is sort of like cut away there? That white building, how it's cut away there? There's actually a walkway there. You can see where the garage door is and all. And that walkway will extend all the way through here. So you'll have, I think, a much friendlier environment. And in contrast, the Berkeley City College, while, you know, it's kind of maybe a snazzy modernist design and stuff, it does some things for the streets. But you could argue that maybe it's not active enough for the streets, I think. And for the folks who are really into historic character, or, you know, having some buildings that complement the traditional character of downtown, you can see, you know, the materials and the way that the building sort of leans out and stuff like that is quite different than the traditional buildings in the downtown. So the future buildings are likely to be much more contextual to the historic buildings. That doesn't mean that they would be imitating the historic buildings, but rather that they would pick up some more of the features like the ground floor retail. These two blocks here originally were rail yards. There's actually like a little train station there. And then first they built on that block. This was actually a little park right here. This block here was a park for a long time. Then they built on that. Where the Bank of America building is, that used to be a 10-story building. It was torn down and made into a 1-story suburban style thing. Really unfortunate for Taecker. Interesting now that there's a big fight, or a little bit of a fight, in terms of whether it should become a 10-story building or not again. But it was the economics, and you know what's terrible? It was a John Galen Howard building on top of it, and it was because it was going to take a lot of money to renovate it, and it was just their priority at the time. Just so you know, so you see where the BART station is. So this, you know, is the bus rapid transit. There's some talk about straightening the street out. Actually, you know, you don't notice it, but Shattuck Avenue, going for the BART entrance, would be straight. When they put the BART entrance in, it's actually an interesting urban design move that I don't think works. If that was a more interesting building, you'd really notice it as you're driving down Shattuck and all. They went to the trouble of like putting that thing on axis with Shattuck, and then they made it dark and ugly. Right?
They must have liked the moment.
I mean, if it had been like the Crystal Palace, you know, and actually they're thinking about like creating a new dome, or actually moving, and you guys might have an attitude, you know, opinion about this. They're actually talking about even maybe moving the main entrance to the other side of the street, so it could be part of the Center Street Plaza.
Yes.
Okay.
Why don't they just turn this all into one street and have that other part be...
That's one of the things that's being thought of. It wouldn't be closed completely, but they'd make it a slow street. They make it
have a slow street on that side.
Exactly.
And you can have that as a park and get together.
There you go. There you go. And also, you know, the mixed-use buildings with the retail and the restaurant on the ground floor. Versus this side of the street, which has very inconsistent street tree pattern, blank walls, parking lots. Where would you rather be?
I have a quick question, John.
The University Art Museum is more than just about showing the art. It's also about, you know, kind of like having a laboratory for thinking about things conceptually. So there's a big move, there's a huge fundraising drive that's going on about building a new art museum. And it would be located here, a much more accessible location. You could take BART to it. You wouldn't have people driving up and down Durant and Bancroft to get to it. And this particular design, this museum is being designed by Toyo Ito, who's one of the world's foremost museum architects. If you guys know the work of Frank Gehry, it's a little bit like Frank Gehry, only it's not just the skin that does those kinds of things. It's actually the structural system that does all sorts of expressionist sort of moves. So. Very exciting. Very exciting. The design history of the campus is really cool. You know, I mean, I'm not going to get into it now, but those who don't know it, you know, I want to pique your curiosity. anyway, so Strawberry Creek goes into a culvert here. It comes out a little while for a block or two down farther west of here, but then it goes into the bay again. So there's just active interest throughout Berkeley on daylighting creeks, and in this case, the idea would be not to literally daylight something, but to at least get some sense of some awareness of the creek in the downtown itself. So here you can see it's going into this culvert. The latest thinking, well, Walter Hood, who's a professor of landscape architecture up at Worcester, has been looking at it for the Eco-City Builders Group. The city does not yet have an official design, okay, for Center Street, but the design that Walter Hood is developing for this nonprofit group basically would pump some water out of Strawberry Creek and have it circulate down Center Street. There's lots of different ways you could do it. It would not be the full flow. It would only be some small flow of it. Again, because when this thing hits flood stage, it's a huge amount of water. So most of the water still needs to go in the main culvert. But some piece of that water, some small portion, constant sort of volume, part of that water could go down Center Street and could become, this water feature. And whether it would be have lots of oak trees like this, or whether it would be more of a modernist sort of interpretation of the trees space. We've called it Kittredge. You get the name thing? I got the name this Kittredge Green. And because it's at the end of Kittredge Way, and it's not a park. Because the university wants to make it clear that the experience is a people's park, which is actually the university land. They want people to always remember that it's the university land. So we negotiated Kittredge Green, and it's going to be across the street from a major affordable housing project, as well as office space. The location of the Brower Center, which is really cool to see going up. It's going to be 6 stories. Ground floor retail. Auditorium. It's going to have an auditorium.
It gives so much more context when he's pointing at something.
It's going to have nonprofit office space, about half of it, and then on the other half, it's going to have subsidized affordable housing for families, targeted families. And then Oxford Way itself is going to undergo a redesign with a lot more street trees, traffic calming and stuff. So you have an opportunity to have housing for families across the new open space. And there's also talk about, when this becomes a green, having some features that would be a good fit for the family housing.
Do they have a design already done for it?
No, that's your next design. Plot check, great. This is a new addition. I think everybody would agree that's a very sensitive, this is kind of the contextual architecture thing that I was talking about earlier, where even though it's new, even though it's modern, it picks up a lot of the same things. It's got the cornice line, it's got the vertical piers are really important to this building. The vertical piers aren't quite the same proportion, but they're still there in this building. Having windows and panels and the spandrels are the things that are between the windows when it's vertical composition. Having those line up in a vertical way picks up the verticality of that, right? Mention the cornice, and then one of the finesse moves in doing contextual design is where the old and the new abut. You actually use that as a joint. The idea is to create a design joint. It's really different from the old building. It kind of accentuates the fact that is a new addition, and yet it's still complementary. Now, opportunity totally missed. Really. What does this building have to do with this landmark building here?
They could have built the same.
This has more to do with suburban single-family housing end tables than it does to do with Art Deco.
San Jose.
My view.
Like LA Valley.
Yeah, exactly. Totally missed opportunity. I do appreciate that there's the ground floor retail, which is active. That's really important. and I do appreciate that it's got the housing above. It got the uses right. It got the building type right. It got, in my view, it got the building type right, but totally missed the boat in terms of the architecture. Things are not always as they seem. This building here, which kind of looks like it's fairly new, is actually inside. It's Victorian apartments with coved ceilings.
What?
Coved ceilings means, you know, these ceilings that actually curve on the edges. It was filled with parlors. KPFA, the radio station, had their studios there for years and years. And historic preservationists did not succeed in sort of saving it. They lost that one, and anyway, it got modernized. Now it's viewed as an important opportunity site. This site, and as well as the Ross Dress for Less, are seen as key opportunity sites. Really, you know, just a few feet from a bar entrance.
No, it's not Ross.
Yeah.
And then,
I'll never again be able to say I got it at Ross.
I mean, did you get a different kind of tenant there? Move them out? Get some up
Well,
higher above it? Or?
Within a 20-year time frame,
Okay.
long time, 2 decades.
It's been here about 20 years, not quite.
If you allow for significantly greater height, you actually might get that redeveloped.
Right,
If you allow for only 5 stories, it's already a 3-story building, right?
2-story building.
We have that downstairs. Okay, fair enough. 2 stories, all right. Which, with probably a pretty good cash flow, it probably makes a fair amount of money. Allowing up to 5 stories is not going to change that building. There will be insufficient incentive to go through that effort. But if you allowed for an 8th story, or you allowed for a much taller building, 10-story building, or even another tower there, then you've changed the metrics and you've helped to recreate the downtown. Well, you know, one of the storylines behind, I still think, and the committee rejected this, I still think that we should draw a line that within half a block of a barred entrance, you should allow, if it's not a historic site, you should allow a building that's comparable in scale to the Wells Fargo building. So you'd have, the Shattuck Hotel would have one, Ross would have one, the new hotel would have a site. But that notion's been rejected.
You could have no.
They might come back a year later. Great idea.
Right.
That's it. Somebody else needs to say it. So you go, you know, you got the sun, you got the crescent here, and then you have the circle, and then you have the central glade, which it has several parts to it. You know, it's below the library, and then it's in front of Doe Library, and then it's the mining circle, all on the central glade, main spine of the. And just so you guys know, it's a very celebrated point of that main spine is where it ends, which is that brown utility box. No, seriously. So there's some interest to like remaking the glade so that it's connected to Center Street, so that it acknowledges the axis, so that it relates to the new art museum, and so that it also helps create a fitting end to Addison. You know, connects to Addison. A lot of people in Berkeley don't like it. There's a lot of built-up animosity about the growth of this big institution, you know, kind of pushing into the neighborhoods over the years and so forth. It's understandable. And yet, I think we have succeeded in adopting a different tone, a much more positive tone between the university and the city. You might not know this, but the downtown plan, actually, the reason that we're doing it now is that the university was sued. The city sued the university because they were planning all this development, but they couldn't tell the city exactly where it was going to go, what it was going to look like, what the traffic would be more precisely on all the streets. And because you have to disclose all your negative impacts, the university wasn't able to do that. The city sued, and the university said, okay, we'll figure out how everything's going to go together, and we'll even help you pay for the downtown planning effort to do that. So my salary is actually paid for by the university. not directly, but indirectly. I get my check stub is from the city. So when you read about me in the paper, you'll know it always says Matt Taecker, salary is paid for indirectly from the university. And it's beholden to the university and all development status. And then it goes out from there. Okay. Anyway, so one thing that the committee identified, I think this is just such a great idea, is then it's one of the highest priority sites for development growth, university. You know, they were thinking about putting it all over the place, kind of tucking it away, stuff like that. And the committee said, no, focus it on this corner. Make this your top priority in your church for development, so that you go from, you know, a parking lot and kind of like a vacant, you know, soon to become Mike Spike's sort of nearly vacant space, into having, you know, a fitting end to University Avenue that continues the retail up. And since the university is going to pay for the streetscape, creates a much more beautiful street.